friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. I cannot believe that we are halfway through the month of June already. What I also can't believe is that I've already completed 11 books this month. Audiobooks have been my life. I've listened to at least 5 of the 11 have been audiobooks. I am going to go ahead and tell you about the books that I've read already this month and what I thought about them. And let's just get started. Two of the 11, I've already talked about in my May wrap up because I finished them very, very early in the month of June. And that was 84 Charing Cross Road by Helene Hanff, which is a nonfiction epistolary book about this woman in America writing to this bookstore in England. Super cute, 3 stars. It is a traveling book that I am doing with my patrons. So that has already been mailed out to the next person in the list. The other one that I already talked about is The Keepsake Sisters by Lori Wilde. And this was another patron-related book. Every month I ask my $8 level patrons to recommend a book for me to read, and I choose one of those books to read during that month. And so my May book was The Keepsake Sisters, which is about twin sisters who were separated at birth, never knew about each other until they had both done DNA tests. And when the second one did a DNA test, she discovered that she had a sister. And so they meet, and where does it go from there? It was really interesting to read. I think I also gave that one 3 stars. I liked the story of it, but it didn't blow me away in any ways. But I've already talked about those 2. 3 more that I'm going to talk about rather quickly are books 5, 6, and 7 in the Bridgerton series. Yes, I only have 1 left. I listened to each of these in about a day, because I just can't put them down. It is just what the doctor ordered for this time of year, especially the last couple weeks have been so hot. And I don't know, I just am in the mood for a romance. And so these Bridgerton books have fit the bill. So in book 5, it is To Sir Philip with Love. And this is Eloise's story. I love it. I love it so much. It was so Eloise. She is such a spunky, independent, doesn't want to fit into a mold of women at her time. And her relationship and love story doesn't fit the mold at all, but it was very sweet. I really enjoyed it. Book 6 is When He Was Wicked. And this one is Francesca's story. And she had been married, and very early on, you learn that her husband passed away. And then this is her second chance at love story. And When He Was Wicked, so we know that the love interest is going to be a bit of a rake, or at least have that reputation. Very fun as well. I feel like When He Was Wicked was the most steamy of the ones that I read so far, and I think therefore I knocked it down a star. That was the only one I think that I gave 3 stars. I think all the rest are actually book 7. I also gave 3 stars. I think maybe I'm just losing a little bit of interest because I flew through them all so quickly. But then book 7 is It's in His Kiss, and that is Hyacinth's story. So this time around, this month, I read the 3 girls, Eloise, Francesca, and Hyacinth. Last month, I read the 3 boys, Anthony, Benedict, and Colin. I just have 1 left. Gregory, is his name Gregory? I just have 1 left. I can't believe it. I will finish it very soon. I actually might finish it this month. I have a road trip coming up to Massachusetts towards the end of the month. So I feel like this would be much better choice for a car audiobook as opposed to 1984 that I did as my last car audiobook, which was not a good choice. All right. After those romances, I read something that wasn't at all a romance. It was a library book, so I don't have it here. And it's The Nature of Fragile Things by Susan Meissner. I flew through this book in about a 24 to 30 hour period. This book was so good. I gave it 5 stars, and we follow this woman, Sophie. She answers an ad in a paper for a mail order bride type of thing and shows up in San Francisco, and almost immediately off the boat, she gets married to this man who she doesn't really know. He was really looking for a woman to care for his daughter. So when she gets there, she's got a ready-made family. So she makes the best of the situation, tries to. Her husband is away on business often, but she falls in love immediately with this little girl who is mute. Selectively mute, I should say. Basically, we follow Sophie as she tries to adjust to life on the West Coast now in California, and her husband, who's away all the time and isn't quite receptive and warm at all. He's very cold. And then there is an earthquake, a major earthquake. He is gone. The husband is gone. What's his name? Martin. Martin is gone, away on business, and Sophie and Kat have to get out of the house as quick as possible. And just before the earthquake, this woman shows up, and their lives all become entwined together. And so they try to escape and try to find shelter in the midst of this massive earthquake that ends up becoming a fire, a dangerous fire that destroys a good portion of San Francisco. And where does the story go from there? There are secrets and mysteries, jaw-dropping moments, twists that I did not see coming at all. And I was here for every last moment of it. So it was kind of fun because it was a historical fiction. We also had this family drama of Martin and Sophie and Kat, this little girl who's grieving her mother. And then we have this mystery that comes into play as well. So it was really cool. I really liked it, and I gave it 5 stars. I did read a Netgalley book this month. I read The Girl Who Stole an Elephant by Nisrana Farouk. This was a really fun book set in Sri Lanka, I want to say. It's an Own Voices story about this little girl who's a little bit of a Robin Hood. She steals from the rich to help the people in her village, but she starts getting a little too cocky, I think, and ends up stealing the queen's jewels, and bad things start happening to the village because the palace guards and such are not going to let the queen's jewels just disappear. So it was a delightful, fun story. It's super short. I think I gave it 3 stars, but it was a fun romp. I liked seeing a different culture. I liked the little Robin Hood idea. I thought it was a fun story for sure. The next one that I finished is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. This is a reread for me. I don't reread very often, but I am rereading this series along with Amanda at the Curly Reader and Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand and Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library. We are reading this together, and I and Amanda, I believe, have already watched the adaptation, which was so good. But after watching the adaptation, I wanted to go back and reread the first 2 in the series because I actually never finished the 3rd one. So I'm like, let me go back and reread the first 2 and then read the 3rd one again. So kind of flew through this. It's a YA fantasy, super fun. I ended up giving it 4 stars because it was just fun. It's a fun read. So in this book, we follow Alina and Mal. Alina and they were kind of orphaned, grew up together. Alina kind of holds a torch for Mal, who doesn't have a clue. He's a soldier. She ends up discovering a power that she never knew she had. In this world, there's this shadow fold which cuts the world in half in a sense, and there are these creatures in the shadow fold, and it's just dangerous and scary. And the Grisha, these people who have these powers, they are training to fight to ultimately try to destroy the shadow fold. There's a fantastic villain, the Darkling, who you kind of start to think about in different ways throughout the book. Just really cool. I just really enjoyed this. Gave it 4 stars and can't wait to continue, hopefully before the end of the month, continue with the second one. I picked up kind of on a whim Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day. Kate Howe did this World Book Day. She did a book battle with a couple different booktubers, and they each chose a book and tried to convince people to pick that one to do a read along with, and Miss Pettigrew is the book that won. This is by Winifred Watson. In Miss Pettigrew, I found my book person. Like, Miss Pettigrew is me in so many ways. Not every way, but in a lot of ways. She's a 40-something woman who has never had love and is single and a little bit down on her luck. She works as a governess. I'm a nanny. Her father was a pastor or a curate. My dad was a pastor. So at the beginning of the book, Miss Pettigrew is at a temp agency and she gets this job that she thinks is going to be as a governess job. She shows up and there's no kids to be found, but who is there is Miss LaFosse, who is a bright, sparkling young character who just is beautiful, like stunningly beautiful, comes across as slightly airheaded, but isn't. She just has a lot of energy, a ball of energy. She comes across as like a Hollywood movie starlet, and Miss Pettigrew doesn't know what she's getting into when she shows up, but she kind of gets thrust into adventure right away when Miss LaFosse asks her to kind of cook breakfast for this gentleman friend that spent the night, and then asks her to help get rid of this gentleman friend before the next gentleman friend shows up. And Miss Pettigrew is kind of in a whirlwind, but loving the drama because her life doesn't have very much drama. So she just decides early on in the day that whatever the day brings, she's just going to go with it. And Miss LaFosse and her friend end up giving Miss Pettigrew a bit of a makeover. They go out. Miss LaFosse is a nightclub singer, and so she ends up at the nightclub. And it just, all of these things, the day goes by so quickly. And the book is actually structured like the day. So each chapter has a time period. So this is 12:52 p.m. to 1:17 p.m. So it's structured so that we kind of follow Miss Pettigrew throughout the day. It was delightful and charming and a lot of fun. And Miss Pettigrew is me. So now whenever there's a question about what book character is most like you, Miss Pettigrew is going to be my answer from now on. I love her. So that was a totally fun read and just what I needed. Then, thinking that I was picking up another lighthearted book, I grabbed the sequel to The Bookshop on the Corner, which is The Bookshop on the Shore. They're kind of companion novels. You totally could read them independently, but there is a little bit of the storyline of the first one in this one, but we follow a totally different character. So in this one, we follow Zoe, who lives in England. She's a single mom. The dad is around, but not really around. They're not married. And he's kind of off doing his own thing, determined to become a DJ, but he's not really financially supportive or supportive in any other way. And Zoe is really struggling. Her rent is going up and she just doesn't know what she can do. And her son has been mute his whole life, has never made a sound. I read another one about mutism this month. Interesting. Not on purpose. Anyways, Zoe ends up getting a job moving to in the bookmobile van that was in the first book. The Nina, the one who started that book van, is pregnant and needs to go on maternity leave. And so her friend connects her with Zoe, and Zoe goes up there to run the van. And for her housing and room and board, she ends up being an au pair for this family who lives in this huge estate, and these 3 kids have gone through 6 nannies previously until Zoe shows up. They call her Nanny 7 because she's the 7th one, and they are very precocious and slightly wild, have no structure and no routine, and Zoe steps into the mix and is up for the challenge, and it was really good. There were some heavier topics towards the end. It started out kind of light and fun, and what is she going to do with each of these different situations that shows up? But as it goes on, there are a couple, grief is a big part because these 3 kids who are wild had lost their mother, or their mother left them, and nobody really knows the story why. It's kind of the mystery in this town. Everybody speculates about it, which they also hate. So the mother has been missing. These 3 kids are grieving and have no control. Yeah, there's a couple things towards the end. It got really intense, and I wasn't really prepared for that, but I was here for it. I really enjoyed this one, and I also gave this one 4 stars. So good. Oh, did I say I give Miss Pettigrew 4 stars? I did give this one 4 stars as well. And finally, I was going to say my last book of the month, but we're still only halfway through the month. The final book that I just finished last night is Lucinda Riley's The Seven Sisters. I started a new series, and I think that's why I picked up a sequel, because I'm like, if I'm going to start a new series, I need to be working on another series. So I did pick up The Seven Sisters, guys. I gave this 5 stars. I read this with Fiona over at Reads and Eats, and I love chatting with her. She's from Scotland and has a fantastic accent. But in this one, we meet the family that have 7 sisters. There's 6 sisters. And this book is Maya's story. She's the oldest. But right at the beginning, we meet Pa Salt and this family and how kind of get the story of how each of the different children, or when each of the different girls came to join the family. So he adopted these 6 girls from all over the world. They are incredibly wealthy. They live in Geneva on a lake in Switzerland. Lake Geneva in Switzerland. Is the lake named Geneva? They live in Switzerland on a lake in an exclusive house. The only way to get to it is by boat. But then Pa Salt, very early on in the book, dies and leaves each of the girls a clue as to where they came from. So in this book, we follow Maya as she follows the clues to find her home. So we travel to Brazil and Switzerland and France, and we just learn about Maya. And Maya had experienced some trauma in her past in relationship that really made her closed off, and all the other sisters are off in the world doing amazing different things, and she had moved back home and has been living in a second house right on their property, and very content to kind of be a hermit at home. But throughout the course of this book, she really opens up and blossoms and learns more about herself and learns to trust again, falls in love, and it's just lovely. This is definitely a fantastic starter of a long series because there are so many questions that I still have, and it ended with a little epilogue almost of the next sister that we're going to follow, with almost a cliffhanger at the end, like what so there's so many questions that I still have about the family as a whole. It's called the Seven Sisters, but there are only 6 of them. Like, when is the 7th one gonna show up? And I know that the last book is called The Missing Sister, so I'm like very intrigued to continue on with this series. They are quite chunky, and so I'm not going to pick it up right away, but I'm definitely intrigued to keep going. I gave it 5 stars because I thought the way that it was all woven together and the way that it drew me in, knowing that it's a long series. I was a little hesitant at first, like, am I going to want to keep going? But, and I love that there was 2 storylines. So as Maya began to learn about her past, we follow one of her ancestors, maybe her great grandmother's storyline as well. And I loved both storylines. I love that there was a historical element without being so focused on the history. You can kind of see, she goes to Brazil, and the Cristo Redentor, the big statue monument of Christ, that is Christ the Redeemer, I think it's called, in Rio in Brazil. We learn about when that was first created, and Maya's ancestors were connected to the people who were creating it, which is pretty cool. So we learn all about that, the stock market crash that happened in America, how that affected the rest of the world, because it definitely affected people in Brazil at that time. Like, so many different things we learn about kind of on the outskirts of the story of this family, of Maya and her family in particular. I just thought it was so well done, the way everything was woven together so well. Yeah, I loved it. I loved it. So yeah, that one's getting 5 stars for me. And that is it. I just today started The Orphan Collector, which is my Patreon book club book for the month of June, by Ellen Marie Wiseman. I don't have that with me right now. And I'm still working my way slowly through Remember, which is the nonfiction about memory by Lisa Genova. So those are the only 2 books I have going at the moment. But yeah, 11 books already? Like, holy moly. I should probably slow down for the rest of the month. Who knows? I am going on a trip at the end of the month, so I won't get as much reading done, except that it's a 10-hour drive and I might get a lot of audiobook time in. Anyways, that is all for this mid-month wrap-up. I would love to hear what has been your favorite book that you've read so far this month. Have you been in a reading mood? Are you in a lighthearted reading mood? A heavy-duty book reading mood? I have been craving a mystery. So chances are you will see a mystery in my second half of the month. And I think it's going to be an Agatha Christie, because I've really been craving like a straight mystery. So hopefully that will happen. And as well as all my library books that I have checked out right now, and a good chunk of them are on my anticipated reads list from the spring. So I would like to get to a bunch of those as well. So we'll see what happens in the rest of the month. I would love to chat with you in the comments down below. You guys know I love talking to you down there. That is it for today. So I will be talking to you in another video very soon. Bye.